This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
Welcome to Beyond the Arc. My name's Kevin O'Connor, and it's NBA Draft Day, folks. It's one of my favorite days of the entire year. Today, my guests are Tate Frazier. We're going to talk about our expectations on draft night and some of the things happening around the NBA. And then I bring on Mirin Fader, my friend, coworker from The Ringer. And we're going to discuss her profiles on Scoot Henderson, Amen, and Ausar, the Thompson twins. I love these discussions today because it's important to consider the other guys aside from Wemby, who, of course, Victor Wembanyama is the best prospect since LeBron James. He's going to be good or great for many, many years to come. It's just a matter of what level does he reach? Is he a Hall of Fame talent? Is he a multi-time All-Star? That's going to have a lot to do with his durability and the development of his perimeter game on offense. But the other guys, Scoot Henderson, if Scoot figures out his jumper, and if Amen and Ausar Thompson, they figure out their jumpers. Scoot, 6'2", downhill attacking guard. The Thompson twins, both 6'7", versatile defenders, playmaker, connective pieces. Those guys, if they figure out their jumpers, they have long-time all-star potential. For Brandon Miller, wing out of Alabama, it's the opposite. With him, developing beyond shooting and playmaking, becoming more of an interior finisher, that's going to be the key for him to become a multi-time all-star for many years to come. But this top five, those guys, Wemby, Scoot, the Thompson twins, and Miller, this top five is strong. And I know there are some analysts who say it's weak. Beyond those guys, I disagree. I think this class is strong. It's deep. The lottery is littered with guys I really like in this class. Kobe Buffkin. You got Black out of Arkansas, Hendricks out of UCF, the late first round, the second round as well, Kobe Jones, Omax Prosper, Jaime Jaquez, Jordan Walsh. This draft class has so many guys from the top until the middle of the draft where they're going to come in right away. They're going to either give hope to a franchise with those top five guys, or they're going to be able to play right away for those teams drafting in the late 20s, 30s, and 40s. I love this class. It's probably my favorite entering the draft in my time with the Ringer since 2017. That 2018 class was really good too, but I'm fired up about it. And today for Beyond the Arc, I'm excited to talk about it with my guests before the draft itself on Thursday night. We're recording this on Wednesday, so some news could change. Let's get into it first, though, with Tate Frazier. Tate, we're here on draft day.
Oh, yeah.
All reports seem to say that Brandon Miller is going to go to the Charlotte Hornets with the number 2 pick after Victor Wembanyama goes to the Spurs with the number 1 pick. Are we to believe this? All of these reports, everything that we're hearing, that this is as locked in as it is. 1 year after, on the morning of the draft, it was Jabari Smith going number 1 to the Magic, and then it ends up being Paolo Banchero. What should listeners and viewers think about this?
I just think that draft season is a lot of fun. There's a lot of smoke screens, and like you said, Woj last year said Jabari Smith, all signs point to him, and the line moves accordingly, and then all of a sudden draft night comes, and Paolo Banchero is the number 1 pick, and last year I heard Paolo LaMelo was the preferred pick of the Magic. I remember talking about that, and people were like, really interesting. Like it was kind of shocking. Brandon Miller since day one, when the lottery, was done, the Spurs celebrated Wembanyama. The Hornets have said from day one it's Brandon Miller. That's their pick. They have fallen in love with him. It is a quote-unquote fit pick, but also Mitch Kupchak said that they're not going to make a fit pick. They're going to make the best player pick. So a little bit of a contradictory thought there, in my opinion. But sources say as close to Monday when MJ saw both guys in the building that Brandon Miller is still the pick. I am not completely sold on that fact, and Jordan has basically said he will be involved in the pick but will not make the final decision. Mitch Kupchak will. So I even though all signs point to Brandon Miller, I'm not sure I'm completely sold yet, KOC.
Why the smoke screen? Like, what would be their incentive or reason just to stir things up right now as at the number 2 pick? Is it for trade reasons?
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's what I would say. I think it's for trade reasons. Also, there seems to be a common belief that the team with the number 3 pick, the Portland Trailblazers, love and fancy Brandon Miller as well. So why not say you like the guy that they like the most to maybe entice them to feel like they have to trade up? We saw this happen with Markelle Fultz, Jason Tatum, Danny Ainge got all this credit for this wizard move, right? And
that's true.
So maybe it's one of those things where that's the reason you put that information out, to make Brandon Miller's value go up. That would be one thing I would point to. But in general, I think Scoot Henderson is believed by many to be the number 2 player in the draft, and I wonder how Charlotte really feels about it.
To me, the difference is, Scoot Henderson, 6'2", downhill attacking guard. He's got the it factor. He's got these intangibles that people love and resonate with. He's a mature kid. He works hard.
Our boss Bill Simmons said he acts like a 28-year-old.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Loves him, absolutely. However, he's also 6'2".
Right.
He gets targeted on defense. He's got okay vision as a passer, makes a lot of sloppy decisions on the floor, but he's good. And he hasn't proven he can be a consistent shooter, whereas Brandon Miller, he's the opposite in a way. He's 6'9". Getting to the rim he's been inconsistent, had some good moments at Bama last year as a freshman, but overall he shot sub 40% at the rim according to Synergy in the half court. Those are not good numbers, but he's 6'9". He play makes. He can shoot. He can come off screens and handoffs. In high school, he was a mid-range pull-up guy. He's versatile on defense, takes charges, chase down blocks. To me, Miller is the best player available and the best fit for Charlotte. I get it with Scoot and LaMelo. I think those two can work together. I think it's really like a no-lose in a way for Charlotte with those two guys. It's just a matter of, what path do you want to go down with how you build this team? Whereas for Portland, with the number 3 pick, if you keep Damian Lillard and then you draft Scoot Henderson and you already have Anthony Simons on the roster, that's a strange fit. So for them, I think you could be onto something there with Charlotte trying to get Portland to move up to 2 to pick up an additional asset to get the guy that they absolutely want, which brings us to our second question here.
Yeah.
With draft night, is there a trade that you would like to see made involving the Portland Trailblazers? There's been so many reports about them in recent weeks. What do you want to see them actually do, Tate?
Well, I would like for the Charlotte Hornets, I don't know what camera I'm looking at, Charlotte, pick up the phone, maybe call New Orleans, see about Zion, but that's a sidebar. I think Portland, like you said, I think they have a position where their star, who has been dedicated for a decade plus, says, I want to win now. You know where I stand. You know who I am. He went on IG Live to try to dispel some of the rumors that are going around about where he stands on things. Jimmy Butler doing Dame time to the camera right after the finals put a lot of pressure, I think, on Portland with Damian Lillard. And the idea that they would trade for Zion Williamson is a great one in the sense that Zion is a Nike guy, Jordan guy, goes to Portland. I think he needs eyeballs on him, right? I mean, Q scores, marketability, all these things that are the business side of basketball, they're all, in question now, unfortunately, because of what we had to deal with on Twitter. Thank God that's over, as everyone on the Pelicans has been able to put out there. Thank goodness that's over. But Zion is a supreme talent, former number one
posting
pick.
on Blue Sky now.
Please stay away from it. Don't check it out. Don't read it.
Nobody does.
Leave Zion alone. I'm a Carolina guy, and I'm saying that said. Let the man live. But Zion is still an asset. That would be nice. I think Paul George is the name that comes to mind. As far as trying to put a star next to Dame, that makes sense. Paul George is fine being the number 2 option. He seems very content in that position. Dame can be the number 1 guy with a wing like Paul George. And if they can stay healthy, they can really contend. So if you're Portland, that's what you're looking at. And maybe that's why if you take a Brandon Miller, you say, we have young Paul George, give us current Paul George, and let's make a little deal here.
I get it from Portland's perspective to want to go for it all with Dame. He just had a career best season. I mean, That was the best we ever saw Dame. It was 1 year after it was the worst we ever saw Dame because he was hurt. He had the abdomen injury. So I think with Portland, I get it. And Dame works with you. He's like part of that front office, essentially. He's involved in decisions at this point. At the same time, if you could draft Scoot or Brandon Miller at number 3, have him with Shaedon Sharpe and some other young guys that you get back for Damian Lillard future picks, I mean, you could quickly rebuild and have a really good young core. Michael Pina, in an article on The Ringer, he had a trade idea not involving the Heat, but involving the Nets. That was the other team that Dame mentioned he would like to go to. He said he's friends with Bam Adebayo with Miami and then with Mikal Bridges with Brooklyn. And he said, how about Lillard to the Nets for Ben Simmons, Patty Mills, Cam Thomas, and 5 unprotected first-round draft picks via the Suns and the Mavericks. If you were to get that with Portland, to me, that's the trade I would like to see most, aside from Zion going to Portland, which would just be cool for basketball reasons. Second to that would be Dame going to Brooklyn. I just think that combination there with all their wings and length and versatility, Dame and Mikal Bridges would be fun to watch. And then for Portland, I mean, they'd have a lot of great future picks and a good young core. I would love to see what Cronin and Schmitz and that Blazers front office would be able to do with a clean slate, post Dame. I think it could be potentially exciting times in Portland very soon.
And we know front offices don't like to make phone calls, especially to players. So the fact that they have to include Dame in a lot of these decisions, they probably like the idea. They're enticed by the idea of a clean slate, like you said. And Brooklyn, even watching them in the playoffs, right? Bridges is their number 1 option. Cam Johnson, hopefully they can bring him back in free agency. But if you have those 2 guys, thing 1 and thing 2 on the wing 1 and wing 2, and you bring in a star like Dame Lillard, now we're looking at Brooklyn in a totally different lens. Claxton's another guy if they can figure out a way to get him back. And that's why you got those picks for Kevin Durant, so you can make a move like this for another disgruntled star. It makes sense. Brooklyn makes a lot of sense to me on paper. And then from a basketball standpoint, it'd be great for Dame to have a chance, right? Isn't that we all want Dame to just have a fair shake, right? We've seen he's had great moments. The Paul George shot, hit a game winner early on in his career, 2013, right, in the playoffs. I mean, he's had playoff moments, but we want to see an actual playoff contender with Dame. Why not Brooklyn? I know Pat Riley will be very upset about this. I feel like he knows something, though, because the way that they approached Beal was very blasé. We don't care. You can take Bradley Beal, enjoy Phoenix. And it felt like they had another plan on the back end. So I think Dame Lillard will there will be something that Miami tries to figure out there, but Brooklyn makes a lot of sense.
As of Wednesday afternoon, there was reports from Shams Charania of FanDuel TV that the Celtics, an actual contender, Dame did not want to go there, but there were reports that they're going after Kristaps Porzingis from the Washington Wizards. So we see Beal go to the Suns. Kristaps Porzingis could be heading to the Celtics in a 3-way deal that would send Marcus Morris from the Clippers to the Wizards and Malcolm Brogdon from the Celtics to the Clippers, with draft compensation also going to Washington. Now, KP, I mean, he's been injured throughout a lot of his career. A lot of people are not high on him as a player, but he's coming off a career best season. Some stats for you, Tate, from Second Spectrum. On offense, he led the NBA in points scored per possession on post-ups, 1.29. He was 5th in the NBA on points scored per closeout, attacking a rotating defense when he was behind the arc from 3 going into the lane, 1.23 points per closeout. On defense, he was number 4 in the NBA defending pick and rolls, 0.93 points allowed per pick and roll, behind 80 Steven Adams, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and right ahead of Walker Kessler, who was unbelievable as a rookie for the Jazz.
Love Walker Kessler.
KP played 65 games. Shot 40% on catch and shoot threes, was attacking closeouts, posting up better than he ever has, defending the pick and roll, blocking shots. I wrote earlier this week in The Ringer that he is going to be one of the steals of the offseason if a team can get him from Washington. Boston was just in the finals a year ago, And they almost had a chance again this year. They didn't make it. But if they get Kristaps Porzingis with Time Lord, Robert Williams, and Al Horford in that front court, to me, like, they kind of propel themselves to the top of the East. And maybe that's an exaggeration with KP's health, but he raises their ceiling.
I think Brogdon, as much as on paper looked great because he was obviously sixth man of the year, it did seem like there was a chemistry issue with Marcus Smart and him. There was a little bit, maybe, I don't want to read too much into it, but we got the body language doctor Bill Simmons on our side here, so I'll take a note from him. It seemed like there might be some issue with who is the point guard of this team. Marcus Smart is the point guard of this team, despite him not being a traditional point guard. Getting someone like Kristaps who can have a kind of a reinvigoration of his career in Boston makes a lot of sense. And adding rim protection is a great idea because guess what? You're going to have to deal with Nikola Jokic. You're going to have to deal with Giannis Antetokounmpo. You're going to have to deal with Joel Embiid. So that's a nice piece to add.
Well, and let's say it is a Boston-Denver finals next year, right? You can space Jokic out.
Yes.
And that's something that Miami couldn't do with Bam Adebayo.
He could take him to the free throw line. That's about as far out as he could.
Absolutely, right? And so I think for Boston, this is about having lineup versatility. You can play with two bigs, one big. You can space out a guy with KP out there. To me, like KP, I'm surprised there has not been more hype around what he did this past season because it was like, oh my goodness. This is finally the version of Kristaps Porzingis that a lot of people were hoping for. In Dallas, he couldn't post up the way he does now. He only relied on the turnaround jumper. He's much more diverse from that area of the floor. He can do more off the dribble. I don't know, man. Like maybe it's just a one-year blip and he starts getting hurt again next year wherever he's playing. But if the Celtics do land him, and maybe they do by the time people watch this, we are recording this on Wednesday. To me, that could be one of the home run deals of the entire offseason. We did get another actual trade, though. The Nuggets traded with the Pacers. They traded 40 in this year's draft and a 2024 first-round draft pick, the worst of potential picks, to the Pacers for 29 and 32, which means the Nuggets now have 29, 32, and 37 in this year's draft class. Bruce Brown going to be an unrestricted free agent this offseason. Jeff Green as well. It feels like Denver right now, they're at a point where like they drafted Peyton Watson last year. He didn't play much, but Christian Brown did. They have young players that they feel good about. And now they have 3 first-round draft picks. I mean, 3 first in the middle of the draft. And they could get guys that help them.
Yeah, Christian Brown is a success story for them because he goes from winning in college to winning in the NBA championship. That doesn't happen often. We saw Magic Johnson do it. There's only 5 guys all time that have ever done that. So Christian Brown is an anomaly, but he is also kind of the table setter for what they're looking for, right? And one person or one player that would be in that group right around that range is Andre Jackson Jr. from Connecticut, who's a guy who I think has
he'd be perfect.
Yeah, right. At worst, he is going to be a perfect wing on the defensive end to back up a Michael Porter Jr. who has had back problems and things like that. So you shore up the wing position a little bit. You get some depth there, and I think he's a guy that has a pretty high ceiling, and I think he can develop in a similar way that Christian Brown has. So that's a name I would throw out there.
Or even Bruce, he can play the Bruce Brown role. I mean, to me, like if you
don't want to put that in the hands of a rookie, but you're right. I mean,
if you draft him, suddenly maybe you're like, I don't know. Maybe we don't have to pay Bruce Brown.
And Bruce Brown, go get paid. You know what I mean? I appreciated, the sentimental value of how he acted at the parade. He was like, one more year.
I don't care about money.
Yeah, should I opt in? And Michael Malone was basically like telling him that he is going to opt in. But I appreciate his agent for being smarter for that. And Bruce Brown, like, go get paid by the Pistons. Go get paid, somewhere else. But
San Antonio, play with Wemby, something like that.
There's a ton of options for Bruce Brown, and shout out to him. He had a great run in the finals. But if you can find some of those talented guys in the draft at that range, I think that would be great for Denver.
Who's the Christian Brown of this draft class? Who's the rookie that's going to be contributing in the playoffs?
I think it's a great question. I mean, you kind of can rack your brain, and a lot of this stuff is right. Who you favor, who you like. I just see a world in which Jaime Jaquez Jr. Is a contributor on a winning team, and I hope that he gets drafted to a winning environment. Somewhere like Utah wouldn't be, the preferred destination for someone like Jaime Jaquez Jr. No disrespect to Utah, but if he goes to the Heat or the Warriors or even the Lakers, right, who have the 17th pick, I think that would be a great spot for him.
I'm with you on Jaime. Like, I think he's going to come in right away. I've heard rumblings of him even going as high as 18 to the Miami Heat. And like, there's the reports out on Wednesday that the Heat could be trading down from 18. Maybe they want to trade down because I still think they can get Jaquez in the 20s. That would make some sense. Having Jaquez, play underneath Jimmy Butler, learn from him. Like, that would be exciting to watch. Colby Jones out of Xavier. I think he's another guy who could come in and play right away, depending on, like, so much of it's fit, right? Like, some of these guys are going to get drafted to teams that are young, and they're not going to get an opportunity to even be in the playoffs. But so much about it is, like, for Denver to have 29, 32, and 37, I mean, like, for them, it's going to be fascinating to see if they even try to trade up more.
And all you need is one of those to hit, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's the other part. You take more swings in that range, and you're saying, hopefully we find a Brogdon, a Draymond, someone, Bruce Brown, one of these guys in that second round that immediately know how to win, know how to play, and can impact immediately.
And sometimes, those hits turn into a Draymond Green or a Jimmy Butler. And they don't always. I'm not sure if there's a guy like that necessarily with that upside in this year's range from the 20 to 40 range, but sometimes guys just get better more than you ever could have expected. How about Desmond Bane with Memphis a couple of years ago? He goes 30, and he's 22, 23 years old when he comes in, and there's like, oh yeah, he's a shooter, and that's about all he is. That's what the skeptics said. But, I think, for him, he has exceeded a lot of expectations. I had him 20 on my board, but I never expected him to be even as great as he is right now.
Yeah.
And he could only continue to get better.
Another name, Jalen Wilson, Christian Brown's national championship teammate. Jalen Wilson knows how to score the basketball, and he's got the size. He's slid down to the 5 at times. He's played the 4 consistently. I think he'll probably translate more to a 3 in the NBA, but he's another name that if you want to take a flyer on a guy and you need some scoring punch off the bench, Jalen Wilson can get the job done.
So we're talking about, Boston potentially getting KP, Denver making moves, trying to bolster their team to continue the run and have an actual dynasty.
Young, cheap depth. We
Absolutely.
love it.
It's critical. However, there are teams on the up and up. You mentioned Utah. They're a team, they have 9-16. We have these teams in the middle of the lottery, the middle of the first round that are trying to be that next team. Are there prospects in that range that you are irrationally high on as home run swing players or guys that you feel like are going to have long careers, whatever your kind of mindset is, the guys that you really love in that mid to late lottery range?
I wonder where he'll end up going because I have him ranked, we did our OSP big board. I had him ranked 7th, but Cason Wallace out of Kentucky, I just think he's one of those guys. There's been a lot of Kentucky guys like this, whether it be Devin Booker is a perfect example going 13th. But I just think Cason Wallace, if you have, let's say, Utah at number 9, he's still on the board. That's a great pick. And I think he is a guy who can defend full court, you know what I mean? Pick up a guy full court, no problem, can handle the pressure, can handle being the guy who has the ball in his hands. And I think just his downhill finishing ability, all these sorts of things only are going to improve. And I don't even think we saw the best version of him at Kentucky. So he is a name I would throw out there.
When do we ever see the best version of Kentucky
course.
guards?
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, John Calipari, I mean, he's not getting the best out of these guys. I don't know what's going on there. But he's a name, and I feel like Danny Ainge is probably hot on his trail to figure out how to get him to Utah.
How about Taylor Hendricks out of UCF? I mean, for me, he's the guy that I really like. I have him 6th on my board. I think he fits the qualities of maybe he's not the high upside potential star, but he is like the high upside star role player where he can bring versatile schemes on defense because of what he provides as a weak side rim protector. He can block shots. He can switch on offense. He's a near 40% catch and shoot guy. He can attack closeouts. 6'8", long arms, tough-minded player. I think wherever he gets drafted, I would hope it's with a team that has maybe a center who can provide some beef around the paint or space the floor, like Indiana's Miles Turner. I'd be curious about him there as a fit. I'd be interested in him with Utah. As another example, with Walker Kessler protecting the rim, Lauri Markkanen, like how big they could be. I just think Hendricks can fit anywhere, any team. We talk so much about prospects. Oh, if they can improve this or if they can improve that, Hendricks just needs to continue on the natural trajectory that he's on, and he can fit on any team in the entire NBA.
And when you were describing him, it sounded a whole lot to me like Aaron Gordon, right? So if you can figure out a way to have him next to, an ideal scenario, a top 5 center all time, that would be a great spot to fall to. I mean, I think Hendricks is obviously coached by Johnny Dawkins, a great basketball coach, a great basketball mind. So he knows the game really well. I think he's developed really well. And I think if you put him in a situation where he is not expected to be your number 1, number 2, number 3 scoring option, he'll flourish. Very similar to, I guess Aaron Gordon is probably the number 3 or number 4 scoring option for Denver, probably more number 4, and MPJ is probably number 3. But that's the best place for him to be. And you were the first person, KOC, I saw that high for him, and now it feels like that's consensus. I mean, as you get information from front offices, they all love Taylor Hendricks.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where he falls, though, right? I mean, he could go 7 to Indiana. He could fall all the way to the 10 mark for Dallas. I think Dallas at that 10 spot, if they don't trade out of it, they like Taylor Hendricks or Derek Lively, the Duke center.
I think Lively is the pick there.
It does seem like
that's what, from what I hear from Dallas, they love Lively.
Apparently, I mean, like, you never know what to believe sometimes around draft season, but my understanding is that Lively has really impressed teams with his jumper through the pre-draft process,
which is insane.
Yes.
This guy did not make a shot outside of the paint until February at Duke.
I mean, he stunk. Let's just say he stunk.
The only shot he can make is a dunk, and even those are question marks, KOC. So I didn't know what was going on. It looked like a guy who had never played basketball before until about mid-February, and then something clicked, especially on the defensive end. So I think that's what Dallas is looking for. They're looking for rim protection. I think that is what Jokic has taught all of us, and Denver, right? You're going to have rim protection, and Anthony Davis did his best for the Lakers, but even though it was the closest sweep in history, we know we hang the banner. You're going to need rim protection against the Denver Nuggets.
Do you have a favorite prospect to team pairing in the first round?
Yeah, so Jaime Jaquez, first and foremost, I'm a big fan of his game. I think he's fundamentally sound, and Jokic has also taught us that, yes, your athleticism, you can jump out of the gym, but if you don't know how to play basketball, it's not going to work against him. Jaime to the Miami Heat is a great one that you threw out, that they love him. I love that fit because it's perfect. Him and Jimmy play similar, but I would love to see Jaime go to the Golden State Warriors. Okay. I just think that Golden State, Mike Dunleavy's taken over. Dunleavy's a Duke guy. He likes veteran players. He likes guys that know how to play the game the right way. Steph Curry said, I don't want projects. I've seen Jonathan Kuminga. I want no more projects around me. And James Wiseman. I think James Wiseman was a better player than Kuminga as far as like what they can translate to. Kuminga still needs to develop into a player. He's a great prospect, no doubt about it. A lot of potential. But getting someone like Jaime in the building, I think, would be great for Golden State. He's a winner. He's a California kid. I think he gets it, whatever it is. And I think Steph Curry, on draft night, you make that call if you're Dunleavy and you say we're drafting Jaime. I think he's happy about that.
I would think so too. Like, Jaquez on the Warriors would be amazing to watch.
Former Under Armour guy when he was at UCLA before they switched back too. So there you go. There's a little connection there.
That's a good point.
Bad ankles, KOC. Who else has had bad ankles? Steph Curry.
You can learn from Steph about what he did to resolve.
I don't know what he did, but Under Armour knows, and maybe Jaquez finds out.
I think with him as well. Like, can you imagine just him with his playmaking ability and footwork and that Warriors motion system?
Of course.
I mean, my goodness.
He's going to get a lot of open threes, too. Those same threes that Harrison Barnes missed once upon a time, Jaime Jaquez knocks him down.
And talking about motion, that's why I really like the idea of Kobe Buffkin out of Michigan going to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Nice.
I think with Buffkin, he is so good moving without the ball. Kind of Jamal Murray-esque with the way Murray operates with Jokic. I think Buffkin with OKC, you could have him with Chet Holmgren and dribble handoffs.
Is that number 12 you're thinking?
Number 12, yes. And I'm not sure he'll actually make it there. Maybe it requires a trade up from Oklahoma City. Maybe he ends up sliding. We don't know yet. Cam Whitmore is falling, it seems like.
Because of medicals, correct?
Yes, medicals and iffy workouts as well. So a lot to shake out still in the middle of the lottery. But Oklahoma City, if they can get Buffkin, pairing him with Giddey and SGA and Chet Holmgren, the primary guys, Buffkin can kind of just fill the gaps. Spot up shooter, cutter, mover, and dribble handoff actions.
Sounds like a great 6-man for OKC.
Be perfect. Absolutely perfect. Tate, Chet Holmgren, didn't play his actual rookie year, but so that means the 23-24 season will be his rookie season. He'll be competing against Victor Wembanyama with the Spurs, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, the Thompson twins. We got a long way to go. Summer League is yet to be played yet, but today, morning of the draft, who's your pick to win Rookie of the Year in 2024?
Well, if you look at the odds for the number one pick, I think they're minus 50,000 for Wembanyama to be the number one pick. I don't know what his odds for Rookie of the Year are. I'm sure they're like minus 20,000 or something like that, something insane. But I do think that San Antonio is going to be very smart about the way that they approach Wemby. I think that, not to say that they're one-to-one comparisons, but what Cleveland did with Evan Mobley, they started him at small forward, and then they slowly have tried to slide him down. Eventually, they want to get him to the 5, and when they do get him ready to play the 5, they'll get rid of Jared Allen. It seems like that's their plan. I think the Spurs will do something similar. I think Wemby will start at the 3 or the 4. Zach Collins will probably be the 5, or JaVale McGee or someone that they signed to be the starting center. And so I don't think he's going to be Rookie of the Year, despite the odds probably saying so. And I think Chet Holmgren, who is going to try to pull a Blake Griffin or a Ben Simmons. I think they both did this where they basically redshirted their rookie years, but then their rookie years were their second years, and they went on to win Rookie of the Year. So I think Chet Holmgren would be my pick for Rookie of the Year.
Chet Holmgren had a quote recently where he's asked who's the best player in the league, and he said, me in 2 months.
I mean, you got to love the confidence. And people forget Chet Holmgren was hurt by LeBron James. So if there's anyone like the only person that he couldn't hold up against is the force that is LeBron James. Some consider him the GOAT. I think that is that is no knock on Chet Holmgren. So I think he's all right. I don't think he's a frail guy. And if there's a lanky big that I have to pick to bet on next year for Rookie of the Year, it's not Wemby, it's Chet.
I look forward to seeing the first Chet versus Wemby game.
Oh, it's going to be magnificent.
It's going to be beautiful.
It's going to be a lot of gangly movements. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be like the incredible whatever those things are outside of car salesman. Yeah, right. That's what it's going to look like, but with a basketball in their hand. So that'll be fun.
I'm picking Wemby to win Rookie of the Year.
Okay, not a bad pick. Minus 20,000. Look it up on FanDuel.
You're not going to make much money on that pick. Tate, we will be on the Bill Simmons podcast on Thursday night talking about everything with the NBA draft. I'm excited for that, man. I think Thursday night's going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
When did the Celtics pick, by the way?
They have the 35th pick at this current moment. We'll see if that's included in the KP deal, but we'll see. Maybe we'll start recording the podcast.
Was Draymond 35 or was he 36? He's right in that range.
Right in that range.
Yeah, so we're in Draymond range. So whoever gets picked there, Seth Lundy's the new Draymond. There you go.
Tate, I look forward to it, man. Have a good rest of your day. I'll be back shortly with Mirin Fader.
Thanks, KOC.
Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. I'm here with the Ringers, Mirin Fader, a New York Times best-selling author. What an honor to have Mirin Fader here. How are you doing, Mirin?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing excellent. On theringer.com this year, you profiled a whole bunch of NBA draft prospects amongst all the other stories you write. The features Victor Wembanyama is the number one player this year, but you profiled some of the other guys. You looked at Amen and Osar Thompson, the Thompson twins out of the Overtime Elite, Scoot Henderson from the G League Ignite. For people around the league who aren't necessarily following the draft all year long, there's a lot of focus on Victor. People see the highlights that go viral and all that. But what stood out to you about the Thompson twins and Scoot Henderson as characters entering the league that people should care about?
Well, first of all, they're actually very similar. They are both incredibly intelligent, all of them. They're intelligent and they have insane work ethics. I think when we talk about the draft, we so emphasize the physical. We want to know how people are going to perform athletically. But I often find that the mental part is underrated. And I think all of these players, they share the same growth mindset. They all look at their mistakes. They're perfectionists. They want to be better. They don't think they're finished products. And, I just love that. I think everything you're seeing right now, as impressive as they are, it's only a little glimpse of how good they can truly be.
With Scoot Henderson, we'll start off with him with the G League 90s, potentially the number 2 or the number 3 pick in the draft. 6'2" guard, downhill attacking presence. He's shown flashes as a pull-up shooter from the outside, albeit he's been inconsistent. good playmaker, shows solid passing vision. He's not necessarily like a top of the line Chris Paul-esque playmaker, but he's very good. With Scoot, you mentioned the personality aspect and how, both the Thompson twins and Scoot are players who have a growth mindset. You had a quote in your feature story about Scoot where he said, "I love watching me mess up." I thought that spoke to, can you kind of explain more of that mindset that he has? Because I feel like that's what teams find so appealing about him, is just that approach to the game that he has.
Yes, I love that quote. I mean, he's not just saying that, like, it's not lip service. He genuinely likes watching his mistakes. He's obsessive about correcting things. And this was put into him really, really young. He would watch film when he was younger. He was always listening and observing. And so he was taught from a young age, you don't just watch yourself succeed. You don't talk about the good things that you do. You focus on your mistakes. His dad, who coached him, would harp on him and point out mistakes. And in a way that I almost felt, to me, sounded like this person is being trained to play at a very high level from a very young age. There was always just something about him that was older. And I think when he watches himself make mistakes, it's not a shot to his ego. He gets almost excited about it. Like, great, now I can improve.
He's, I interviewed him back in October around the time of the Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson G League Ignite game. And, what I sense from him, like he mentioned, you talked, you have a bunch of books behind you. I'm not as much of a reader as you. You're a New York Times bestseller. I'm not much of a reader at all, but Scoot Henderson is a reader. He's a big time reader. And like his intelligence, he's a teenager, but he's a very mature teenager. And that's something you talk to NBA teams about, where they say, well, some kids come in at 18, 9 years old with the maturity of a 15-year-old. Some kids come in at 18, 19 with the maturity of a 23, 24-year-old. It seems like Scoot falls into that latter category, which would you say, is that something that could help him kind of transition into the league as a professional?
Absolutely. You are not going to see this person out and about doing things that, aren't representing the team well. I mean, his teammates told me, like, we kind of never see him because he's always in his room reading. He likes that alone time and that introspection. One of the books that we talked about in particular is one of his favorites. It's called The Purple Cow, and it's about being different. It's a business book, but Scoot likes it because it's about, not doing the safe route, being risky, being an individual, being purple in a world of boring brown cows. And so I love that anecdote about him liking that book in particular, because the intelligence you see on the court is the intelligence off the court. Like, he is a very thoughtful individual. He thinks hard about who he is, what he wants out of life. He's just a very mature person. I really did feel like I was talking with somebody who was, a 10-year veteran in the NBA, and not somebody just, wow, I'm so excited, my life is about to change. I profile a lot of young guys, and I just didn't get that vibe of like, wow, I'm so excited to be here. He's like ready to compete.
Game wise, do you feel like obviously he has the mindset and the approach? Game wise, he didn't necessarily improve as much with his second season with the Ignite from his first season. His shooting numbers were down across the board. He didn't make significant progress as a playmaker either. Do you think with Scoot, what was behind that lack of progress from year one to year two? Do you have any concerns with his game in that regard? Or do you think that that's just like a teenager, playing in the second, third best league in the world, and you can't expect that type of progress?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure. When I did the profile, it was before that. And I don't know. I can tell you this. Nobody is harder on him than him. So if anyone's pointing out lack of progress or not shooting well, like, he will be the first to say, I didn't do this right. I could be better. So I assure you he's working hard. But I don't know. When I think of Scoot, I just think he's a gamer. So he can have an off game. He can, whatever happens, I still think you put him on the floor like he's ready to compete. I do. I just think he's physically ready, despite the things that you mentioned. I don't have concern. I mean, he just looks like an NBA player. He thinks like an NBA player. Yeah, and I think maybe because I do know that mentally and the way that he is wired, and honestly, the family members that he has around him in place to keep him grounded, those are the things that make me feel like, you know what, this guy's in a good place. He's incredibly grounded. He's fully capable.
How do you think Scoot Henderson compares to Amen and Asar Thompson, who are projected to go behind him in the draft, but there are people you talk to around the league that say, oh, actually, Amen Thompson's the better prospect. How do you stack up, some of these younger players entering the league as ball handling, shot creating guards?
I mean, I don't think, hey, this person is better than the other. I think, to me, that is your skill and what you're so good at. For me, I think that what impresses me is the confidence about Amen and Asar and Scoot. It takes a lot of confidence to have a completely different route and take a very risky route doing these untraditional leagues. And so I think people sort of underestimate what that says about them and their character. So I don't know. I think, of course, they're all incredibly gifted. They're all incredibly talented. Their athleticism is insane. I mean, for all these profiles I wrote, I would just watch clips of all of them, just be astounded. Like, how old are these people? But yes, I don't know. I think Amen and Asar, I joked with them. I was like, I think you'd really like Scoot, like as a person to hang out with, because he's just like you guys. He wants to be the best. He has that alpha top dog mentality. He's not scared of anyone. And he is completely obsessed with breaking down film and talking shop. And they were like, that's so funny you say that. We've heard that too. So there's they can't wait to compete against Scoot, but they also, I think, would get along with him on a friendship level.
They definitely do seem to have like a lot of overlapping qualities as with their approaches to the game. They're both professionals. They're basketball junkies. I mean, they love watching the NBA. I remember talking to Scoot when I interviewed him. He's like, he loves watching Chris Paul and all these other types of point guards and learning from them, and just likes watching for pure entertainment. And the Thompson twins, they love watching basketball. They would watch basketball even if they weren't, about to enter the league. And I mean, that's a positive quality that a lot of players don't have when they enter the league. And with the Thompson twins, one of the things that I thought was interesting in your story was some of the detail you got into with what they've done to improve their shots. They've been poor shooters throughout their lives. They've done everything they can to change their shooting mechanics. What did you learn that kind of went into their approaches and their open-mindedness to changing their shooting mechanics?
I mean, open-minded is such an understatement. I think we really need to appreciate where their shots were, 15 months ago. It was night and day to what it is now. I mean, their shooting coach, who deserves a ton of credit, Pat Quinn, said basically they had to relearn the entire motion of shooting. So imagine being a potential top prospect in the NBA or college or whatever they wanted to do, 16, 17 years old, and you're learning how to shoot. I cannot overstate how terrifying that is, and how little ego you need to have to be able to be receptive to something like that. And so Quinn would take them near the wall and they would just practice almost chest passes to the wall to work on the backspin. So we're talking about breaking down literal movement from wrist to fingertips. And I was just so impressed with that anecdote, because I've profiled tons of guys who, if you said, hey, we're not going to shoot for the first 2 weeks, we're just going to throw passes at the wall, they'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm so good.
No wonder why their shots haven't gotten better.
Oh my God. That is false. That is false. I'm not going to let you get away with that. I will
Numbers don't lie here, Mirin.
I will address that in a second. Anyways, so back to what I was saying. They would throw it against the wall. I cannot with you. So false, listeners. So false. And anyway, they worked and they worked and they worked, and they had to trust the system, and they had to trust that, hey, we're at OTE for a reason. We don't have the pressure of having to win at a college program. We can take this necessary time to work on our shots. And if you've seen the clips like I have, you would know that literally their shots are night and day. There's a fluidity about them that just was not there as far as gathering release, confidence. I think it was Asar that hit the game winning 3 for the championship at OTE. But so it's definitely just gone leaps and bounds. And that's why I feel so good, I guess, about their potential, because if they're making that type of progress within a 1-year span, what kind of shooters will they be in 5, 6, 7, 8 years? That's why I always emphasize the mindset, like I said, because you can always, if you truly let go of ego and you believe that you can be better, your potential, your upside is even higher. And that's why I think their upside is so high.
I mean, I say that kind of tongue in cheek because the results didn't fall last year, but the mechanical changes did improve. They experienced streaks, especially Osar Thompson during the OT playoffs where he was, shooting the heck out of the ball. Like you said, he had the game winner. He had moments where he was hitting clutch shots, and you look at the pre-draft video now, and Osar Thompson's shot looks smooth. It looks very good. And granted, it's open gym and all that. It's encouraging to see the mechanical progress that he's made over the course of time. Amen Thompson, the people I talk to, his shot hasn't come around quite as much as Osar's. But I think with both of these kids, like, we can talk about, their weaknesses as jump shooters and will they be liabilities from behind the arc or as pull-up guys. But the thing with them is they bring so many other qualities to the floor. And I think this is why Kevin Ollie said in your story that they can be Hall of Famers. They're not just, perimeter guys in the sense that they can live without that skill. They're downhill attackers. They're athletic at-rim finishers. They're selfless playmakers. They are awesome defenders, especially Osar Thompson. He is locked down type of guy who's going to have positional versatility. So I think for both of them, they're safe prospects in the sense that they bring so many other qualities that are clearly of NBA quality. It's just a matter of what is their ceiling actually going to be if their jumper is always inconsistent, no matter how much work they put into it. Just like some people just don't have touch, and maybe that'll end up being the case for them, but they're no doubt putting in the work and doing everything that they can to get better. And I think that's what's admirable and why, Kevin Ollie's so high on them, why you're high on them, and why they're going to be top 10 picks in the draft, because they bring more than just their shots. So was that part of your conversations at all with them about kind of their approach to the game? Because they're not just, scorers at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they are old school throwback in the sense that they love this idea of, I am going to guard the best player. Like, they love that competition, that spirit of locking up. A lot of young guys, you have to teach them how to play defense. These people want to play defense. So I actually think that separates them. And like some of the things that they do just in terms of like weak side blocks, it's astounding. And I think I didn't really appreciate the athleticism until I saw it up close, especially on the defensive end. They are very, very much in tune with the fact that you don't want to be a one-trick pony. You have to do multiple things well. And what I found interesting, I don't even think this made it into the piece, was they read what scouts say about them. They very much are in tune with the conversation. They don't get lost in the narrative. But if a critic makes a comment that makes sense to them, they're like, okay, cool. Like, you know what? He's right. Like, I should actually work on this. So I actually really like that. It's kind of like the Scoot thing, right? I love watching me mess up. So they are very much aware that they need to be complete players. And that's why I think the shooting thing will come. But the other thing is, and it sounds so simple, they are really gym rats. They love basketball. They like, Amen was like, I have slept everywhere on this court except right up there. He was like pointing to the third floor. So I just think you can't really substitute that joy. There's a lot of people, and I've always wanted to do this story on somebody that is very successful and has made a lot of money, but hates basketball. Because there are people like that in the NBA that don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't care about winning. They just want to make their money and go. But that's not Amen and Asar. Like, they love this with all their hearts, and they want to be great, and they know they're not great yet. So I really respect that about them.
In your interviews with them, like, obviously siblings can be dramatically different personality-wise. They seem kind of similar, but what differences did you observe between them personality-wise?
It's slight, but it definitely makes a difference. I think Asar is more laid back, and he's more willing to try something off of whim, just go with the flow. Amen is a thinker, and I say this as a fellow thinker. There's nothing wrong with that. People say, oh, I'm type A. I think Amen has that type of perfectionist quality to him. And I think the thinking is actually a good thing. It's his drive to become great. So I think they're slightly different. Asar has, of course, incredible drive and wants to become great as well. But he's just not as, I don't know, just second guessing sometimes as Amen might be. They're both really funny. Like, they're very funny to be around. They're fun. I think they will be locker room favorites. They're also just different in the sense of, like, they want people to know that literally they are different people. And that was a big theme of the story, is that they've always been linked. They've always been called twin. They're often mistaken in scouting videos and captions. And it really bothers them because they love each other, they support each other, but they're like, look, I'm a Sar and I'm a Men. And so I think, it's just important to treat them as individuals. As similar as they are, there are these slight differences to them.
I have Asar one spot ahead of Amen in my rankings, and it's really close. It's a coin flip between them, in my opinion. I just think the confidence level in an Asar's jumper is higher than it is with Amen. One of the things that the counter argument against that is, well, Amen is he's the 100th percentile athlete. Asar is more of 93rd, 94th percentile athlete. He's not elite of the elite. He's just elite, and I think that's the difference between them athletically. However, with Asar, he has been a better defensive player in their 2 years playing in the OTE. You mentioned kind of that decisiveness that he has personality-wise, where he doesn't think, he just does. I am curious to know what's going to happen for him in the NBA if he gets drafted into a situation that says, hey, Amen's been the guy handling the ball for years, but we think you can do that too. And we want to put the ball in your hands and to be the decision maker and see what happens. I'm very intrigued by what could happen, nature-nurture wise, with both of them going into different situations as comparable players. They're similar personalities, as you're saying, similar games on the court, just with some subtle differences. When you look at the top 10, draft order could change on draft night, but are there any kind of ideal fits that you have in your mind for both Amen and for Asar to have the best success moving forward in the NBA?
I mean, I think the best quote in the piece was Damian Wilkins, and he was like, it's kind of not okay, who's slightly better? It's well, what does a team need? Kind of like what you're saying, based on fit, because they can each adapt. And one of the things I thought was really, really cool at OTE was that they would separate them. They'd work out on their own. So they got used to, each playing the one and each doing their own thing, which I think was really obviously great preparation for this moment. I don't know. I seem to think that a Men could go to Houston. I know, of course, I'm seeing Asar with the Magic. I think both of those would work. And the reason why I think it's so, you can't necessarily say, oh, one would be better, at Houston, or one would be better over here because they are so similar, but also because they are so adaptable. If you tell them, go here, you will not see complaints, any of that type of stuff. They're just so easily moldable. And they know that they're going to have to earn their keep, which is why I don't think, hey, one place is particularly better than the other. I just think they're so adaptable that they would make it work and they would contribute. You might not see the leaps and bounds that we're talking about in terms of shooting this rookie year, but I do think if they're in the right situation with the right coach who, believes in them and makes them feel comfortable, they can thrive.
Well, Mirin, I look forward to seeing where they land on draft night, and people can read your stories over at theringer.com and all the other great work that you do. I appreciate you joining me on Beyond the Arc, Mirin.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.